my great pleasure to welcome you to the 16th JGLS Alumni webinar by a distinguished alumna, Ms. Pavithra Jaidev, on the topic of theory and practice of immigration law in Australia. We are thrilled to have her with us today. I'm Professor Shireen Moti, Assistant Professor of Law and Director of Alumni Relations at OP Jindal Global University. For the uninitiated, OP Jindal Global University was initiated in the year 2009 under the visionary leadership of our Chancellor, Mr. Naveen Jindal, and our Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar. In a span of over 10 years, OP Jindal Global University has been recognized as an institute of eminence by the Government of India, and Jindal Global Law School has been ranked as the #1 law school in India by QS World Rankings. Before I welcome our speaker for today, I would like to introduce her and the topic for today's webinar briefly. Ms. Pavithra Jaidev completed her BB.A. LL.B. honours degree from Jindal Global Law School in the year 2018 before moving to Australia on 2 prestigious scholarships in order to pursue her LLM degree at the University of New South Wales, Australia. She is currently pursuing an MBA and a Master's of Global Project Management on scholarship at Torrens University in Australia. She is qualified to practice as a solicitor in the Supreme Court of New South Wales and is also in the process of becoming an accredited mediator. In her current role, she is working as a solicitor for an award-winning immigration and commercial law firm, the Harbourside Legal Services Group. In today's webinar, what Pavithra Jaidev is going to discuss is immigration law. Immigration law is one of the most significant aspects of administrative justice in Australia. The reason as to why it is given such importance is because Australian immigration policy has always been at the forefront of administrative justice. In one way or the other, the immigration portfolio has helped in shaping some of the most important innovations in administrative law in Australia. Thus, the migration program plays a vital role in Australia's prosperity and in its compliance with its international obligations. During this webinar, it will be interesting to discuss as to how immigration law and administrative law function independently and work together at the same time in Australia. With this, I would like to introduce our speaker for today, Ms. Pavithra Jaidev. Welcome, Pavithra.
Hello, Shireen. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me into this webinar. Thank you so much.
We're so delighted to have you here with us, Pavithra. And before we can move into the substantive aspects of today's webinar, what I would really want to know is a little bit more about your journey. It has been just 2 years since you graduated, but you have achieved so much. So definitely there's a lot of planning, dedication, hard work, and perseverance when it comes to achieving so many things in such a short span of time. So my first question to you really is, what were the reasons that drove you to the study of law? Why did you decide to pursue a career in law?
So I think, like many people would say this, but I think back when I was in my 8th standard, I think at that time itself, even though I was too young and naive, I decided to join the profession of law. This was primarily because in early school years itself, I had come across a significant amount of, I had seen people struggle with poverty when I was in my early schooling years. And back then I thought that the only way to alleviate and uplift their lives was by ensuring that legal processes were made more accessible to these people. I think back then what I used to think was that in our country, maybe because the processes were not made that accessible, probably that was the reason why they could not fight for their rights. So I wanted to bring that information, and I wanted to bring that that access to them, that medium to them. And that's why I wanted to become a lawyer. Apart from that, otherwise, I used to watch a lot of crime thriller shows also. So having watched all of that, I think I was a crime junkie. So maybe somewhere down the line, I thought of becoming a criminal lawyer. Well, that didn't work out for me. But then that's what I wanted to become at some point in time.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. That's a very noble thought for a young girl at that age to increase access to the courts and actually access to justice in that way through the knowledge of law. That is very, very interesting. So what role did Jindal Global Law School play in your journey from a law student student to a successful lawyer today?
I think at every stage, in the past 2 years, wherever I have been able to thank my alma mater, I have thanked JGLS profusely, primarily because in whatever I am today, Jindal has played a huge role in developing my personality, my attitude towards the world, my attitude towards education as such. Um, when I came into Jindal, I clearly remember when I saw my classmates and the amount of competition that was there from day one onwards. I clearly remember that sort of, even though I came from a good school, I did well in my academics in my year 12 and everything, but still that sort of pushed me back and I questioned myself, oh my God, am I competing with these people? Am I going to be studying with these people? People who seemed, very much ahead of what I came with, like whatever intellect or whatever knowledge I had, they seemed to be 10 steps ahead of me. And I sort of questioned myself, oh, okay, I'm supposed to be competing with this crowd or supposed to be embracing this crowd. How do I do it? But that being said, my professors nonetheless always encouraged me. The opportunities that were provided to me, they were equal across, across, like the level, the playing field was always equal. So irrespective of the fact as to whether you came from abroad, which some students did in my batch, whether you came from an elite school, which again some students did in my batch, the level playing field for everyone was the same. So if you have good researching skills, if you're able to study your material, if you're able to come into class and participate, if you're able to do all the extracurricular activities, if you're able to create a name for yourself in the group, then that's it. That's your stage. That's your time to shine.
That's so interesting to know, and that in spite of some sort of perceptions and some sort of challenges that we face as young people, you were able to sort of navigate through them and create opportunities as well as utilize those opportunities that were available to you for the best of results. So it seems like you had an exciting time in Jindal Law School and developed from a young law student into a young lawyer today.
Definitely,
So, how was
definitely.
your experience of completing a Master in Law degree from the University of New South Wales in Australia? So, your thirst for legal knowledge had really not ended at an undergrad degree. You went and did a postgraduate degree. Tell us more about your specialization. How was that experience different from the Global Law School, and what did you learn out of it?
So basically, what happened with me was that when I was, I think, in my fourth year, at that time, I sort of spoke to my parents and I told them about my plans of pursuing a master's abroad because I really wanted that experience of, going and studying abroad, becoming more independent. Even though Jindal did give me an independent life in very many ways, still, I somewhere felt that, at Jindal, I always felt at home. So it is like my home away from home. So I still wanted to go a little more far away from my home and do something a little more independent. That's something that gave me a little more independence. So that was the idea. My parents supported that idea. And in fifth year, I started making my applications. When I made my applications, I think during my fourth and fifth year, I was introduced to dispute resolution. That is one of the areas that I've specialized in. And I really enjoyed that that particular area. I really enjoyed the different types of aspects that formed a part of dispute resolution, be it negotiation, mediation, be it arbitration, whatever it was, litigation. So then when I started taking down, like when I started preparing a list for the number of universities where I'd like to apply, I came down with a list of 5 universities, NUS being the obvious choice, and then again MIDS Geneva being the obvious choice. I got through NUS, I couldn't get through MIDS, and then I got through UNSW, I got through Queen Mary, I got through I think King's College London. But the only reason why I chose UNSW, apart from its ranking and its world-class facilities and the fact that it is number one in Australia, that it offered me 2 scholarships. So that was the reason why I chose UNSW. Having
That's
chosen
wonderful. Are these named scholarships? Are these named scholarships or are these partial scholarships, full scholarships? What is the nature of these scholarships?
So the first scholarship that I got was the future of change. So that was for a change maker, someone who aspired to be a change maker in the society, and that was I think it was a 50% cash endowment. So like they had given me money for managing my expenses for that 1 year. And the second one was partial fee waiver, which is the Faculty of Law Postgraduate Academic Excellence Scholarship. So this one was awarded to someone who showed excellent academic skills when they're pursuing their postgraduate course. So these were the two scholarships. And having said that, so I specialized in dispute resolution, and I also specialized in corporate commercial and taxation laws. The subject outline was, I mean, the outline of the subjects was brilliant. I was taught by some of the best professors in Australia. I was taught by Professor Rosemary Howell and Alan Limbry, who are like leading people in the mediation field. I was also taught by Damien Sturzaker, who is the partner at Markey Lawyers. Markey Lawyers is another big firm in Australia. So some very good professors. I was taught by some very good professors. But in saying that, Jindal in a way had already prepped me for the work that UNSW was about to give me. So that in a way helped me, like that in a big way it helped me. So yeah, that was yeah.
That is good to hear that Jindal prepared you for your time at University of New South Wales. Of course, there's a lot of personal determination and initiative that comes with the kind of success that you've seen. You're now today a qualified solicitor in Australia and are currently working as a junior lawyer at Harbourside Legal Services, which is one of the leading firms. And this is really a truly remarkable achievement and no less of a mean feat. So tell us, how was that journey of becoming qualified, getting that job, and now actually doing what you've trained all these years to do?
So I won't take away the fact that managing all of this in within the scope of past 2 years was actually a Herculean feat. I mean, it was a very big feat, and I was juggling multiple things at the same time with this pressure that I didn't want to fail at anything that I was doing, because the cost behind that failure was enormous. So I think it was the cost, the fact that I was staying away from my parents emotionally, it was challenging. The fact that my parents had invested already so much and then were investing again was also another challenge. So at all times, I had this thing at the back of my mind that one failure would cost me a lot more than what I could have measured or anticipated. I think that was the main driving force. But having said that, like we know that JGLS has a tie-up with the Australian legal boards here. So I researched that during my 5th year. I spoke to Professor Sean Starr, who again, I immensely thank him for his guidance. He was the one who told me about this, and then I decided to take up this route. Luckily, my grades were okay, thank God. And because my grades were fine, so I came here, I submitted my papers to the board. They asked me to pick up 3 subjects. So while I was doing my master's, I picked up those 3 subjects. I cleared those subjects. And then I did something called the College of Law, where you do a graduate legal practice, graduate diploma in legal practice. Once you finish that, you are officially eligible to be admitted. There are some other requirements that you're supposed to fulfill, but as easy as this seems, I was doing 12 subjects for my master's. I was doing 3 subjects for the LPAB, and then I was doing 8 subjects for my PLT. All of this while I was working part-time. And then obviously you have to manage household chores also. You have to do all of that also. So everything was like mixed up together. But yeah, I think the constant feeling of being responsible, the constant feeling of the fact that I'm away from my family, and all of this has to mean something. Yeah, I did what I had to.
That's really amazing. You're able to hear me, right? My voice
Yeah.
is audible. Okay.
Yeah.
So after doing all of this, I mean, one would think that you would be exhausted of studying and preparing for exams and submitting assignments, but that doesn't seem to stop you. You're now pursuing an MBA and Masters of Global Project Management from Torrens University in Australia, and that too on a scholarship. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. So should I repeat that question? So all
Yeah,
I was
yeah. Sorry.
Okay, so what I was asking you is that you're currently pursuing an MBA and Masters of Global Project Management from Torrens
Yeah,
University. So
yeah.
one would think that after studying so long, 5 years, and then doing your LLM and then preparing for your qualification exams become a solicitor, so many exams, assignments must have left you exhausted, but you still have that zeal to learn. So how did you end up applying for this course and now doing this course on a scholarship that too?
So, so naturally, because the course that I pursued at Jindal was a BB.A LL.B, right? So it was a 5-year integrated program where I learned aspects of BB.A and then I learned regular law as well. But obviously, the plan was that I wanted to build on my LL.B degree by getting a master's, and like eventually the plan at some time later in the future, the plan was like in distant future, the plan was to also build on my BB.A degree by getting an MBA. So this was something that my parents and me together we agreed on it, but it was, the idea was not to go into it so immediately. It's just that after I completed my masters, I told my parents that I might lose the rigor and the zeal, or what do you call, the enthusiasm to keep studying. Like once you become a working professional, you're working and all of that, you lose that enthusiasm to keep up with studies. So I said I might as well finish this as well, since I want to do it anyways. I want to gain some business and commercial skills as well, build on it. So I said, let's do this. And then I applied to a couple of universities. I got through Torrens University. I got through them. Like I got my scholarship also. That was primarily because of my performance in my masters at UNSW. So that led me to this scholarship. So again, there was a scholarship there, and then now I'm doing that course.
That's amazing that you had such a clear-headed direction in which you wanted to plan your career, and you're actually doing it. And I can see the joy on your face with the fact that whatever you set out to achieve, you're slowly and steadily achieving it, which is a huge inspiration. So now let's move on and delve into the topic for today, theory and practice of immigration law in Australia. So my
Yeah.
first question to you is for people who are uninitiated, do not really know about immigration law in Australia, that could you throw some light on the legal framework of Australia's administrative migration law?
So, like any common law country, Australia is a common law country. Um, we all know that the state as such has three supreme bodies, or three supreme bodies. First being the legislature, second is the executive, third is the judiciary. That being said, like any other common law country, there are also three major areas of law that we all deal with. First is constitution law, where states are given the power. They're given the power to enact laws. They're given the constitution law gives rights and freedoms to people. It also maintains a system wherein executives and legislators, all of them derive their powers, and all of that happens. So that is constitution law. Then comes in criminal law. Criminal law is again where anybody who acts against the state or acts against a person and indulges in criminal conduct, that person is held accountable, and the state steps into the shoes of the victim, and then the case proceedings take place accordingly, because whatever that act is, it is considered to be not only injurious to the person who's been affected, but also the entire state itself. So that's why the state steps into the victim's shoes. Third is administrative law. Now, administrative law is where, so we all know the fact that executives and legislators and judiciary is what keeps us all in, like keeps checks on us, right? It keeps checks on our conduct. But then there is a possibility, right, that administrators can also err, because they're also human beings after all. They can also make mistakes. So this is something that my professor Mercy Deborah in JGLS, when I was doing administrative law with her, she was the one who gave this example that I like even distinctly remember, like clearly remember even now. So since they're also human beings, they can also make errors. So they also need to be put in check, right? There has to be a check and balance system. So that's where administrative law comes into place. But having said that, why administrative law plays such a major role in Australia is because one, uh, the legislature and the executive here in Australia is so closely interlinked. Like in India, we have clear demarcation. Oh, these are the ministers, these are the executives, this is the police officer, and then this is the judiciary. All three play very different roles. But what happens in Australia is that there is such a mixture of certain legislative powers and certain executive powers that is difficult to pull them apart and say that okay, this is this and this is this. Like in immigration, what happens is that, an example, suppose if someone's visa is being refused, okay, the refusal letter will technically go out in the minister's name, who forms a part of the legislature, but this letter would be handed down by the delegate of the minister, and the delegate is a part of the executive. So this is how it plays, like this is how their interplay is. So because of this reason, administrative law plays a huge role in Australia, um, and in the context of immigration law. And another reason why this is given such importance is because Australia is known as immigrants' country. So there is a huge inflow of immigrants into this country, which needs to be kept in check at all times. It needs to be kept under check at all times. So that's another reason why Australian administrative law typically has this, what do you say, plays a very important role in the immigration space.
Okay, so could you talk a little bit about Migration Act, the decision making that happens, the administrative decision making is performed under the Migration Act. That is what we know of. But how does that process really play out in practice? How is administrative decision making being performed in Australia under the realm of the Migration Act?
So what basically happens is that
firstly, can you tell us what the Migration Act is? That would
yeah.
be.
So Migration Act is basically the act using which all the immigrants come into Australia. So the Migration Act as such has 4 main subclasses. The first is for permanent visas, whereby people become permanent residents or they become citizens eventually. But there's a separate act for that. Citizenship is a separate ball game altogether. But permanent residency is something that, PR holders, technically people who come into Australia, that's what they aspire for.
So all in all, Migration Act is the act dealing with immigration law in Australia.
Immigration law in Australia, yes.
So now could you tell us the administrative decision-making process that is performed within the Migration Act, because we are more keen in understanding that.
Right. So basically what happens is that, so how this works, so it's, let me reframe what I was about to say. So how this works is that, let's say today a visa application comes in. The minister sees if all the requirements have, the delegate basically sees if all the requirements have been met in keeping with that visa application. If everything has been met, then well and good, the person would be granted the visa. If something has not been met, then certain requests would be raised, certain information requests would be raised for further information. Now, it is upon the applicant to satisfy that particular information request. Now, if let's say in a certain period of time, let's say timeline ranging between 21 to 28 days, if let's say the information request has not been satisfied or that information that has been asked has not been provided, the minister has the right to refuse that person their visa. The moment this happens, this opens gate for the applicant in case he is onshore, like in case he's in Australia, not if he's somewhere else, but if he's in Australia, this opens the doors for him to seek administrative remedy.
Okay.
This he can do by raising an appeal with the tribunal. And that eventually, if that needs to be further appealed, then appeal it to the court system. That will be under the context of judicial review. But this is how technically it works. So this is how administrative law plays a role in immigration within the context of Australia.
That's very interesting to know. Having known the administrative decision-making process within the Migration Act, what is also interesting to understand a bit in detail is the primary decision-making procedures under the Migration Act. What are these primary decision-making procedures? What is the theory and practice under the Migration Act?
Okay, so how, like I said, that under certain sections, so the primary decision making mainly entails the fact that information requests are being raised. If someone's visa does not have enough information, like I said, certain requests are being raised so that that person can provide that information. Apart from this, let's say if someone's visa is about to be cancelled, they are asked to provide comments on it. So that's another decision making process, because you see, you're asking the applicant to first provide certain information, you're making a decision on that. Then you're asking telling the applicant that, okay, I plan on canceling your visa, why should I not do it? Come on, give me reasons for that. Then the applicant ends up giving reasons for that. So at all these stages, at all these different stages, uh, there is this minister and there is this delegate who has to constantly be involved with the applicant to ensure that they are passing down the right decision that ends up not being challenged at a later date. Like, that's their primary idea, that's the motto. But if at all it gets challenged, then that's a different thing altogether. But throughout the entire process, the idea is to ensure that the person is being treated fairly, the person is being treated in a just manner.
Okay, that sounds like a fair sort of objective to have. Uh, so having known all of this, we'll move on to the merits review in a minute, but just a word to the attendees that Pavithra would be most glad to take your questions towards the end of her presentation. So we have received a couple of questions and we would request you to send a few more. People have emailed me as well when it comes to the kind of questions they want to ask Pavithra. And even today we have received a few questions. But what I would urge you to is to quickly type those questions in the Q&A section, and we would be taking them towards the end of the presentation, towards which we are going to move shortly. Okay, so what do you mean by a merits review of the migration decision?
So what happens is that when a delegate gets an application, he looks at the file, he looks at the evidence that has been presented, and he makes a decision whether to do something with that application, like whether to grant that particular visa or not. Let's say if it's a refugee visa, let's say it's a humanitarian visa or a protection visa, whether to afford that person to a chance to stay in Australia or not. That's the main idea of immigration law, whether you're able to afford another person a chance to live in Australia or not. Okay. But having said that, sometimes what happens is that because Australia has seen certain situations where there are asylum seekers who come in via boats, there are people who try to come in via varied means. Australia is it's a tiny country, on the corner, if you see in the map. Okay. So it can only take so much.
But a
Okay.
beautiful country full of resources.
Definitely. Beautiful country, full of resources, full of amazing people. Everything is there. But you need to say geographically, it's a nation that can only take so much. And if it is, and because of the opportunity it provides, the amazing opportunity that it provides, so many people want to come in, and they're all welcome, provided they meet the criteria. Provided they meet the right criteria. If they do not happen to meet the right criteria, then it's difficult to get them on board, because they have to, at the end of the day, survive and stay within this community, right? So having said that, when the delegate is looking at any application, I'm not saying that this is what happens, I'm not saying they're biased in any way, or I'm not saying that they take the wrong decisions or something like that, but they have this very strict way of checking these applications to check their authenticity, to check how authentic they are. And in that, what happens is that sometimes certain genuine applications are missed out. Certain people who maybe should not have been denied a chance to stay in Australia, they've been denied a chance. That happens. Okay. 1 out of 100 cases, 1 out of 1,000 cases. That's when merits review comes into place, where the person who is onshore has the chance to make an appeal to the tribunal saying that I have been wronged, or this decision that was handed down to me is wrong. And could you please take a fresh look at it based on the evidence that I am going to provide up to this stage? And then what will happen is that the member of the administrative tribunal will step into the shoes of the delegate and will freshly look at the entire matter, like from beginning to scratch. And unlike court system where it's more formal and you have to be dressed in a certain manner, you have to talk in a certain fashion, tribunal is nothing like that. Like having attended some hearings myself, uh, the members are extremely very friendly, they're extremely very courteous. They try to make you feel as comfortable as possible, only to get to know and only to get to know you better. Something that probably the delegate might not have had a chance to do. And that's when decisions get reversed. That is when decisions get set aside. That is when decisions are sent back to the department to say that, okay, this person I think should have a chance at a visa, this person should be invited into Australia, and so on and so forth. So that's where the merits review comes into place, where the member of the tribunal actually steps into the shoes of the actual decision maker and makes decisions on a fresh note.
That makes sense, again, coming to the principle that administrators can also err, and therefore you need checks and balances to ensure that you have the maximum kind of accuracy and the genuine cases do get a decent shot. Having known that background, let's understand the process of judicial review. Of course, as lawyers and as law students, so people in the legal fraternity, which are attendees, we are quite familiar with judicial review in India. But when it comes to judicial review of administrative decisions in Australia, we would be interested to know how such a judicial review is actually performed.
Okay. So I'll try to take the liberty of explaining two very short cases only to explain the aspect of judicial review. Yeah. So the first one is this case called Tanya Singh. It's about a child born to Indian parents, Indian refugee parents in Australia, and their temporary visas were about to be like they were almost on the. I'm sorry, but I think they were almost on the end of being expired, or they were being sent back to India. Either of the two was happening, and but what happened was that this child was born in Australia. So back then, when this case was being conferred, the parliament in Australia gave a very different meaning to the term alien. So what they thought of alien was that someone who came from outside. But what about someone who's born to alien parents in Australia? What about that person? What sort of citizenship is that person acquiring? Is that person acquiring a citizenship by birth? Because since that person was born in Australia, or will that person be considered alien to define that particular term? So in having said that, the department had a different view, the tribunal had a different view. Finally, this came to the court, and the court stated that Parliament was not at liberty to define alien whatever they thought it was fit. Right? They have to take into consideration the entire Australian community. They have to take into consideration all these people who form Australia, and seeing that, they have to define the term alien. So in saying that, they said that, while in Tanya Singh case, even though the child was born in Australia and technically she has been raised in Australia, she has lived with community and all of that, but when you try to dissect it, you would know that at the end of the day, she's still an Indian citizen because she's born to Indian parents, right? And this brought the change in legislation in a manner whereby now the legislation says that if someone has to be considered an Australian citizen, either of the parents, like at least one of the parents, has to be an Australian permanent resident or an Australian citizen. So judicial review clarified that doubt, or that whatever that confusion was there. Judicial review clarified that, which the department couldn't, which is the executive body, which the tribunal couldn't, which is merits review. But ultimately, the federal court did that. So I think that is where judicial review comes into play, when they happen to tackle these sort of issues.
That is very useful knowledge, and interesting to see how the term alien was defined through the process of judicial review, and how that inquiry was made, because a child was born to parents who were Indians, but he or she was somebody who was born in Australia. Then what do you do about that? very interesting to hear the decision. Having known the judicial review of administrative decisions, the practice of the same, how are these judicial reviews conducted under the scope of the Migration Act would be something interesting to discuss.
So what happens is that so tribunals conduct merits review, but the judicial bodies conduct review of these merits.
And I think you've covered this into a large extent in the previous question that I asked you. But
Yeah.
could you just say one or two lines about how in the Migration Act and judicial review are conducted? So my question really is that is the process of judicial review something which is within the scope of the Migration Act? Yes or no? Just one or two lines.
Yeah, so it's a very restricted space because very many amendments came into play. Initially, judiciary had a very like it had a broader role to play within the Migration Act, but after certain amendments came into play, this sort of became a little more restricted. But having said that, Part 8 of the Act still gives wide powers to the judiciary for it to conduct its review. But having said that, there are certain areas, certain privative clauses, something called privative clause, where the judiciary does not have that authority, or I'd say they're still sort of struggling with striking a balance. But otherwise, having said that, fairly, like I said earlier on as well, the applicant has to make an application, the decision has to be approved by the delegate. If it's not approved, it goes to the administrative tribunal if the applicant is onshore and wants to challenge the decision. Once the administrative tribunal makes the decision, if they are not happy with that decision, then they can move on to the court and make an appeal as well. But
Okay.
once the court has made its judgment, then that would be the final case.
Okay. So that's very interesting to know, and it's a background into the administrative and immigration laws in Australia that you've given us, that you've managed to give us in the last half an hour, 40 minutes that we have spoken. And it's certainly a beginning for anybody who would like to sort of do a more thorough reading of this area of law. So, what are some of the books or sources or scholars that you would recommend for somebody to develop a further understanding of immigration laws?
So, to be honest, it's not only me, but you ask any immigration lawyer, anybody who wants to become an immigration lawyer, there is no book
Okay.
for practice.
So that's a good, then you have a good market. You could write that book, Pavithra.
Yeah, this is only because the department happens to change its rules and regulations so many times that there is no book. What most immigration lawyers and practitioners and agents as such depend on, like agents as in the higher order agents, what they depend on is something called the PAM. So it's called the Procedural Advice Manual. So they rely on previous cases that were decided. They rely on department's policy. They rely on this book called PAM. And they rely on Migration Act, migration regulations. But if you say one textbook, one stop solution that could give me all of this knowledge, nothing. Because this was one question that I asked, like if at the beginning of my practice to one of my colleagues to say that, okay, I want to learn more, I want to learn better, is there any book? And that person went to me and said that, there's no book, there's no one book. So I was like,
you
okay.
really learn through your practice and you rely on the PAM. So
Definitely.
you're working at one of these leading law firms in Australia and well-known worldwide, Harbour Legal Services. Harbourside Legal Services. So what is it that excites you about your new job? I think this is your first job ever. If I'm,
Yes. Yes, I've worked earlier on as well. I worked for a boutique family law firm earlier on. Then I worked for an education consultancy for some time as a compliance officer. But then, yeah, this is my big shot. So, yeah, my big feet into the legal career. But having said that, I mean, I work with an amazing team. I have some amazing people who have amazing caliber and skills. I have some really supportive team members, and even my even my senior associates and partners are equally very supportive. They're people who support growth, who support innovation. Like earlier on when we were talking about expansion and all of that. So this firm is one that dreams big, one that believes in expansion. So I'm happy to be placed with people like that who think big and who want to reach out to bigger markets. So and obviously I'm getting the best of both, as in I happen to practice in immigration law, which is something I like, and I'm also able to work in dispute resolution and commercial law, which is my specialization. So yeah, it's best of both worlds.
That's amazing. I mean, that of course, there's a myth among law students that once you become a lawyer, you're dealing with one aspect of law or certain provisions of one law. But what they realize a few years into practice is that whenever you're dealing with a particular matter, you're dealing with an entire gamut of laws, policies,
Yeah.
executive orders, and it's your job as a lawyer to not only find what is applicable, but also to advise the clients that what are their implications on that. So
True,
that
true.
is why we go through the whole rigmarole of research, writing, and analysis in law school.
Yeah, yeah,
So finding the
definitely.
sources for a research paper and for assignments, because that is what you exactly do as a lawyer. But the hours are long, the stakes are higher, and you actually have to give solid legal advice when you sign on that paper, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
these are some of the
definitely.
things. So let's move on to the Q&A now, having a primer on the immigration laws and administrative laws in Australia. So there are a number of questions which ask you, Pavithra, about uh, how does one develop himself or herself into a practicing lawyer in Australia, how hard it is, and what should be the steps that a law student should take while in law school, say a third year, fourth year, or fifth year law student, so that he or she develops into a successful lawyer in Australia or in any other country, but really somewhere overseas outside India.
So, see, irrespective as to whether in the long run, whether you want to practice in Australia or whether you want to practice in India itself, or any other country for that matter of fact, I think what is most important is your ability to think rationally and logically. I mean, that is the key aspect, that in any situation that you are put, you're able to think logically and rationally, and you're able to devise a solution, because in the long run, that is what you're going to be doing for your clients. Um, that being said, certain things that aid with this rational and logical decision making is good researching skills. Because if you're able to develop your research skills earlier on while you're in the law school, eventually it helps. It also, in saying that, drafting skills are equally important. All of my internships that I did, primarily I personally ensured that in all of those internships I had a chance at drafting at least one good document and presenting it to the partner or someone who's heading one of those like good divisions, giving it to them so they can vet the draft and come back, like give me comments. When I was in JGLS, I had this course that was taught by Professor I think Sanoy Das, and he did this drafting course, which I felt like, which was really good. Like it literally hit the nail really hard. So it was a very good course. Similarly, I did another contract drafting course with Professor Mansi Kumar, so that was good. So all these courses, all of this researching, all of this drafting, we think that, oh, this is just futile, it's not going to help me in the long run, I don't need all of this. It definitely, you need it. Take it from me, you need it. If you are not going to have it later on when you go to the law firm, if someone is checking files at you, if someone's treating you badly, if someone is not appreciative enough of what you have done, know it, you have done something wrong in law school to deserve it. Something you have missed, because of which you're being treated like that. Otherwise, there is no reason why, after studying 5 years of law school and after having completed all of these hurdles and having come so far, you still wouldn't know how to research a basic case law or a basic fact pattern, and you wouldn't know how to draft a basic document or at least a note. Apart from that, having said that, mooting is something that develops your argumentative skills. In that, I'm not saying that you have to go and argue with everybody on the street, but where reasonable and feasible, you would argue in a decent manner, like where you would argue the law. So that, I think, your argumentative skills, your researching and drafting skills have to be built. So that, I think, that is the key.
That sounds interesting, and I'm also an alumna of OP Jindal Global University, and I back what you're saying, that whatever skills that you sort of learn as a law student once you become a lawyer. What happens is that you end up utilizing all of those skills. So the idea is to expose yourself as much as you can in law schools to subjects, areas, practices, and electives are a major part of your training. So choosing your electives wisely is also very important. And today
Yeah.
I play the role of an academic. I'm a researcher. I'm also doing administrative work. And I think there was no special training for all of the three. But because we do so many assignments, we are constantly writing exams, we are doing so many extracurricular activities that we do realize how to manage ourselves and our time in a better manner.
Yeah.
Therefore, you have those
Like
administrative skills.
what I feel is that students think that, oh, if I mug up the subject matter in a class, I can impress, I can impress my professor and I can get good grades. But what matters is that law is so dynamic. It almost changes every single day, that irrespective of the fact that you end up mugging up the whole bare act, if you don't know how to apply it, if you don't know how to use your key skills, then there's no point of using that mugging up that entire bare act or that entire textbook. What you need to learn basically is application. So
Exactly.
and the professors are trying to teach you that. So if you wouldn't learn that, then I mean the whole process in itself is not going to work.
So true, because when you'll be in a law firm as well, or you'll be doing your own practice, or becoming an academic or a researcher, see the bare act is going to be in front of you. You would have to
Yeah.
apply the law,
Yeah.
the understanding of the law to the situations that are given to you. That is of true value, not the bare act or the knowledge which is in the bare act, but how do you apply the law to
Definitely.
different scenarios is what you get paid for as a lawyer.
Yeah,
So,
true.
so having answered that question, some of our attendees, along with Mr. Apurva Chaudhary, has a question for you. That there are two sets of questions. First is, what is the difference between pursuing LLM in India as opposed to in Australia? What is more beneficial? And the second part of the same question is, how did you end up specializing in three areas when in an LLM, in a general uh,
And then there's scope for
LLM degree,
specializing only
you
in
have
one.
one area of focus. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll try to answer the second question first, and then I'll come back to the first question.
So,
Um, so what happened with me was that when I came in to do my master's at UNSW, I actually came in to pursue a master's in dispute resolution and not in law. But having completed my first semester, I realized that if I picked up a master of laws, and if I had subjects in a particular order, I could specialize not in one, not in two, but in three areas of law, provided I satisfy the requirement for each specialization. So in order to gain a specialization, you have to pick anywhere between 4 to 5 subjects in that area. But let's say if what happens is that one subject happens to fall between all the three areas, or one subject happens to fall between two areas, you'd still get that specialized, like it'll still count for that specialization. So that interplay or that overlap does not matter. What matters is that whether you have pursued the subject matter that can help you specialize. So luckily in my first semester, I picked subjects not knowing this, but all of those subjects helped me with at least 2 brownie points in each specialization. So in the upcoming semesters, when I pick my subjects, I was wise enough to fill in the gap portion. So whatever was left over of that specialization that I did not fill in my first semester, I ended up filling all of that. So that was primarily the reason why, I mean, that sort of planning or that sort of calculative thinking was the reason why I ended up specializing in three areas of law. But then many of my batchmates, they specialized in two areas of law with no planning, with no calculative thinking or anything of that sort. So it's just how you pick and choose your subjects. That's it.
that's remarkable actually. There's another question from Apur. So there was this
Oh,
question
sorry, I
about
missed the second question, the first question.
LLM. What is the benefit of pursuing an LLM in
Yeah.
Australia or overseas as opposed to an LLM in India?
So, like, see, I haven't pursued my LLM in India. I've done my bachelor's in India, and then I've done my master's in Australia. I won't speak for all other colleges, but then I think Jindal as such more or less offers the same platform, or more or less offers the same course content in some ways, definitely because of the collaboration, and I'm sure Jindal is getting there, like Jindal is on its way to be there. But in some way, the amount of academic scholars that come in and teach, the amount of resources that they have, and the kind of course structure they have maybe makes it a step ahead. But in saying that, our own homegrown universities are not far behind. They're not far behind. They're getting there slowly. But even then, if you want that global exposure, you want to go out and study with people from different countries, you want to have that international exposure, you want to get that degree, you want to live an independent life or something like that, you want to go and study abroad, you want to explore that life, then that's going to be a different thing. But I think 4 or 5 years down the line, I'm sure our homegrown universities would be somewhere or the other at the same platform. I mean, Jindal is already doing it, so it's not far away when there'll be a day when the Jindal is almost competing with, let's say, like a Wharton University or a Harvard University or something like that. So it's just a matter of time.
That's so interesting to sort of hear from you as an alumna that you would like this to be there at the top. And certainly, all these universities have had, hundreds of years. They've existed for
Yeah,
hundreds of years.
definitely.
And the idea is that we have been here only for about 11 years.
Yeah. So that's what a couple of years will definitely take us there, but it'll take a couple of years. But in saying that, I'm not saying that the standard is different in any way.
But of course, you get a more global exposure. You
Yeah.
have access to more collaborations, international faculty, and job opportunities.
Job opportunities as well.
If you train in the number one law school in Australia, certainly your employability is much better in Australia. Of course, you have to meet the requirements and all of that, but it's as good as it can get in a foreign country. One of the attendees, Mr. Apurva Chaudhary, would like to know that how much time did it take you to complete the LPAB or LEC diploma and practical legal training programs?
Okay, so like I said earlier on, that I changed from Masters in Dispute Resolution to Master of Laws. So because of that, what happened is that my visa got extended by 6 months. So what I did was that while I was doing my masters, that's when I did those 3 subjects. Now I could pick those 3 subjects in one go because that was the rule of the LPAB back then. That if you have just 3 subjects or less than 4 subjects, then you can pick them in one go and complete it in one semester. One semester is 6 months, so you need 6 months to complete your LPAB, and after that you need another 4 months to complete your PLT. So that's 10 months, and maybe 2 more months to qualify as a lawyer. So it takes 1 year for you to complete the entire process. But let's say if it so happens that the assessment that the LPAB gives you, let's say they give you anywhere more than 3 subjects, then it's going to be completely different. Because then what will happen is that, let's say you get 6 subjects, then you'll be doing 3 subjects in one semester of 6 months, then you'll be doing 2 and 2. So that in total will take you to 18 months, plus the 4 months, plus the 2 months. So yeah.
That sounds like a lot of work. So another question that I have for you is, how did you manage to put in so much in 2 years? I mean, studying so many subjects and actually succeeding in all of your goals that you had set. What was it? How was your day like in those when you were preparing? I'm sure it's lighter for you now, which is a crazy thing because you started working. But how was it? I mean, how did you do it?
So, I mean, back then when I started when I came into Australia, I already had an internship with Migratory lawyers, right? So that was actually my starting, like I got that internship through Jindal, and then I joined there first, finished my 5 weeks of internship. That was actually my opening to the Australian legal system, like my understanding of the Australian legal system. Immediately after I finished with that, I started with my masters. Now, when I was doing masters, I desperately wanted a job, and I wanted a job in my field itself. That was like this sort of a thing, that I have to work and I have to work in my field itself. So I was going about distributing my CVs, applying online almost every day. Every second day, you'd find me with a bag full of CVs, and I'm walking out and I'm trying to do whatever I can, because I thought that, okay, I've come to a country where nobody knows me, so who's going to judge me? And while I was doing this, my first job, they gave me an opportunity, and I joined them as a legal administrative assistant. Within a span of 3 months, I was promoted to the position of a paralegal. That was because I was able to handle a caseload of 250 cases, not knowing Australian law fully, but only because I used to stay back in office after my working hours and sit and study the family law manual, only to understand family law better. So I mean, that sort of enthusiasm, or that sort of what do you call it, dedication towards wanting to learn more or wanting to excel at whatever I was doing, I think that was what that is what has stayed with me and has helped me come so far. So yeah, I did that. And then after that, I moved to my next job, which was as a compliance officer. I worked for an education consultancy. That was my opening, that was sort of my platform for getting an experience in like getting experience in the immigration field, which eventually led me to my current job. So everything has been building on the whatever was there in the past.
And
But
all
what
this you did while you were pursuing your
while I
master's.
was pursuing all of this. But what stayed constant was my zeal to learn more, my dedication towards wanting to learn more. Because here, what happens is that no matter where you come from, no matter what your qualifications are, you have to start from scratch. And no matter what you are, it doesn't matter. If you're in Australia and if you're a starter, you have to start from scratch. You might have masters, you might have done bachelors, but everybody has to start from scratch, no matter how much experience you have. And when you start in Australia, the idea is to get a hang of what's happening in Australia. And if you don't get a hang of it, you're not going anywhere. So that is what. So if you live in Australia, you live the Aussie way. If you don't live like that, you don't live like anything.
That's a very good way of getting everyone culturally ingrained into Australia and living the Australian life, work
Yeah.
ethic as well as otherwise. So that's great. There are a number of law aspirants who are attending our webinar today, and on behalf of them, I would like to ask you a question: that why should they choose to pursue a career in law? And if they decide to choose and study law, how do they really decide the college that they should go to? So these are typically high school students who are now deciding their career paths. So why should they become lawyers? And if they choose to become lawyers, then how do they decide which university to go to?
Okay. See, so we know that in India we had this. There was a time when we had this craze, right? Everybody wants to become engineer. Everybody wants to become doctor. Everybody wants to do MBA. So I think we are going through the transition phase where now everybody wants to become lawyer. There are less number of good colleges. I'm not saying that, like, there are decent number of good colleges, but um, there are too the supply is less and the demand is a lot more. So that's what I can say. Students who want to become lawyers are a lot more than what the colleges, than the number of colleges that are there out there. So, having said that, the reason why one should aspire to become a lawyer is not because of the lucrative salary packages that it comes with, or the position that it offers, or the power that some may assume. It is more or less because you actually want to serve the society, you actually want to serve the people. Even if you're a corporate lawyer, you should serve the best interest of the corporations, you should serve the best interest of the business that you're working with, or the kind of transactions. If you're doing property, you should try to ensure that you're conveyancing the properties properly. At the end of the day, the idea is to do your job properly. But more or less nowadays, people have this thinking, oh, if I become a lawyer, I'll have this lucrative salary package, I'll have this car, I'll have that, I'll have this. But what about justice? Where is just the idea of justice going? Where is the access to it going? That people like you who have gone into academia and who still want to make that accessible to people like us, students like me, who are making it happen. But what about actual practitioners? Are they doing that? That is the main question. So high school students should actually question themselves that if they want to become lawyers, why they want to become lawyers in the first place. Do they want to uplift the society and build it in some manner, or do they just want it for its hi-fi packages and for its hi-fi social lifestyle and all of that? So I think that is what high school students should know. Having said that, how they can pick law school is that, at least when I went for my master's, the basis on which I picked my college was which college was offering me with a scholarship, which college was having the best facilities, which college had the best faculty. So these were some of the things that I was looking at. I mean, what kind of qualifications the faculty members have, where they're coming from, what is the subject, like the outline of the subjects that is there in my course. So yeah, all of these things, like 5 years is not a short span of time. So if someone is able to tell you that in 5 years you'll be able to do this, and this, and these people will help you in doing this, and if you're satisfied with that answer, a sent person, then that is your college. If you have even a 0.1% iota of doubt that this is not going to satisfy my purpose, then that is not your college.
That's so brilliantly you have put. I mean, I just want to add to what you've said. One thing is that from the face of it and all of these corporate law dramas like Suits and Boston Legal have glamorized corporate law to the extent that it seems like the end all of and be all of becoming a lawyer. Of course, it's something that is lucrative, no denying.
Yeah,
That. But
no
there's a lot
denying.
of hard work. There's a lot of long hours. There's years of practice before you can become a partner of a major law firm. And even after you become a partner, there are so many stresses. There's so much accountability, similar to academics or having your own practice. So the fundamental criteria for deciding one's profession, once you sort of complete your law degree, should be your interest. What is your area
Yeah,
of interest, as
absolutely.
opposed to what is it going to get you? Because
Yeah,
that kind of thinking does not last too far. Or you could be stuck in a job which pays your bills, pays for your lifestyle, but you wouldn't be happy or
be
satisfied.
doing it.
There's a high
Yeah,
chance of doing that. So yes,
yeah.
like how high school students should first think, why am I becoming a lawyer? And second, okay, if I do my legal studies, what is the kind of profession that I would like to? And today lawyers are doing so many things. They're not only practicing in court, but also they become journalists, they're entrepreneurs, they are also social entrepreneurs. That's coming up in a big way. So really, education and law prepares you for so much more than just
Some people are even becoming activists. Some people are taking on some sort of they are doing their own entrepreneurship with businesses and all these kinds of things. I mean, they are taking part in AI. They are participating with technology. They're innovators. They're becoming innovators, trying to make legal, trying to make what do you say, as such, the justice and everything else, trying to make it more accessible. So we are not looking at a world where there is only corporate lawyer and then there is litigator and there is nothing else in this world. No, there are so many other dimensions. I mean, there are people who are becoming human rights activists. There are people who are becoming politicians. There are people who are fighting for environment, animal rights. So you should not restrain, like curtail yourself to just one field of law. This is what I'm going to do. Because when I came into law school, I wanted to do criminal law. I didn't do it. Then I wanted to do corporate law. I didn't do it. Somewhere down the line, I realized, oh, dispute resolution is where I find my calling. I was like, okay. But at the same time, I like immigration law also. I like human rights law also. There are so many other things and amazing work that you can do.
you only discover your interest by trying different things. When I was in law
Definitely.
school, similarly, I started with the idea that I want to become this hotshot corporate lawyer. I joined the biggest law firm, I practiced there, and then over a couple of years, I realized that that's not my true calling. And then I always loved public law subjects when I was in law school, but I was sort of torn between the commercial law subjects and
Yeah.
the public law subjects. I didn't see it as an issue. I thought you could like both at the same time, and I tell my students the same. But today I teach constitutional law, and it's only I've arrived at the decision by trying different things. As you said rightly, that you wanted to start with criminal law, but then you moved on to corporate, and now you're an immigration lawyer. So the idea really is that you need to experiment. You need to give yourself
Yeah.
that chance to even decide for yourself whether you like something in theory as well as practice, because then becomes important about half of your life you're going to be spending in the office in some way or
Yeah.
the other.
And
Even
then
if
you
you're
don't want to
working.
cry your way through it. So, yeah, when you're going to be spending majority of your hours, you don't want to be feeling sad about it.
Yes, I keep thinking this, that we do a lot of training in terms of the subjects of law in law school or any other kind of higher education, but we don't really teach our students how to decide on a career, right?
Yeah.
It's just more of a matter of chance than strategy that you'll arrive at the career that you were meant to really do. And that is something I think should start from the high school level. And that is with the new education policy in India in 2020. Probably we are headed in that direction, that we give
Direction.
our
Yeah.
children, we give our youth more scope to expand their possibilities and also to understand their strengths, right?
Yep.
So that they can land up in a career that they really deserve to pursue for the rest of their lives. So, Pavithra, those are the questions that I had for you today, and all of us had for you today. In the closing remarks, I would just like to say that we at OP Jindal Global University are thoroughly proud of all your achievements, and we would like you to even try higher, achieve everything that you have thought of in your professional journey. And it seems like you're a strong woman headed in that direction. I use the word woman deliberately, and I do not shy away from the gender debate because of the fact that it's still a true thing across the world that your gender is a part of your identity, and till the time it remains a part of your identity and it defines the opportunities and the challenges that you face or the way you experience the world differently as a different gender, I would keep talking about it. So the idea is that as a woman, you have achieved so much, and you're really a role model for not only women but also men who are sort of thriving in a career in law and would like to make a successful career in a foreign country which has its other challenges as well. There's an immigrant syndrome. There are challenges that come with that as well. So we are proud of you as OP Jindal Global University, and I personally have been able to witness your journey in a way because I've seen your stories, I've seen your small achievements here and there which I keep hearing of. So whatever you've spoken of today is something I kept on hearing, and I'm glad that I got this chance to speak to you today and get the story from the horse's mouth, and that is something that was interesting for me in this discussion. So we wish you all the best, and we think you should make partners soon in Harbourside Legal Services, and we're going to celebrate that.
Pleasure being with you here. Absolute pleasure, Shireen. Definitely, you played a wonderful host today. And you are equally, like I would say that, you're trying to shy away from your own achievements, but I should say that you are an equal scholar and you have done great. And I'm sure that you have you are like the beacon of JGLS alumni, because you've done so well, still supporting the initiatives of the alumni and so on and so forth. But I think you yourself have done a marvelous job being the director of alumni relations. This is a very unique initiative, and I think you've done absolute justice to it.
Thank you. You are very kind with your words. So, to all the attendees, thank you for being so patient, and thank you for the questions that you gave us today, and Pavithra was able to answer them. We will be meeting next week as well for the 17th JGLS Alumni webinar, and this video will be up on YouTube on the OP Jindal Global University page. Thank you, Pavithra, and have a nice day, everyone.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much, Shireen.